Podcaster and former ESPN contributor Pablo Torre did the reporting. He joins us now live. It's nice to welcome you to our program.
Thank you for having me. Happy to talk about this story.
Can you take us through exactly what the allegations are here?
Yeah, so in the NBA, circumvention of the salary cap is a law specific to the sport. In the NBA, lots of things are uncapped, meaning you could be, for instance, the 7th or 6th richest person in the world, as Steve Ballmer is, the owner of the Clippers, of course, the richest sports owner in the world. You can spend on anything. You could pay for the Intuit Dome, his masterpiece made in his own image of an arena using fully private money, no public money, which is a credit to Steve Ballmer. You could have a front office of executives is an uncapped roster of people, and that's all fine. But the players themselves, of course, are governed by a salary cap. There are limits. There's a cap on spending that all teams must abide by. And for Steve Ballmer, a hardcore basketball fan, he knows this, I am told, was frustrated by it. And so the doing of how you pay Kawhi Leonard, who, for those not familiar with the sports cinematic universe, was the prime free agent target, the superstar player who Steve Ballmer lusted after in 2019 and then has signed to 2 extensions since. What I'm reporting is that the way that he got to circumvent the salary cap is by paying him $28 million through a company called Aspiration. And Aspiration has since, of course, this is now back into the business world, has been plunged into disgrace, bankruptcy, and federal investigation. The SEC and the DOJ getting 2 guilty pleas out of Joe Sandberg, the co-founder of Aspiration, for wire fraud to a 9-figure scheme degree. And so this is a story with a lot of moving parts, but that's basically the high-level executive summary of it.
Nothing is going to happen to Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer, for those of you that may not be familiar, is the former executive of Microsoft, partner of Bill Gates. He was very successful in his growth in the company, and he was incredibly successful as far as parlaying his business pursuits into equity, which obviously continues to balloon and grow in net worth. As he indicated, he is one of the richest men in the world, let alone in the United States of America. I believe that a lot of owners in the NBA actually fear him because of how rich he is, and his ability to be able to compete was kind of hindered by the fact that he had to abide by a salary cap and he couldn't get the best players because he could pay the most money. And so what he did was he basically finessed this and paid him outside of it in order to justify getting a player. And obviously, we now facing a situation where the NBA is under a microscope because they don't want the teams cheating or the owners cheating, right? And I will tell you, first of all, that I don't personally believe that anything is going to happen to Steve Ballmer whatsoever because he is too beneficial to the NBA. You don't usually see somebody this rich being able to bankroll their own arena, especially over in Los Angeles next to the Los Angeles Lakers. And then obviously we all know the history of the Clippers. Maybe some of you do, or maybe some of you don't. But their former owner was alleged to be racist and then also, have a thing on for NBA players and all of this other type of stuff. But that's neither here nor there. But the thing about it is that Steve Ballmer, outside of this obvious cheating allegation, is a league's dream because he doesn't need partners. He was willing to overpay for things in order to become a part of the good old boys club. He doesn't need money. He's really doing this because he just loves to compete, and he kind of looks at the NBA as a fantasy league because there's nothing else that he needs to achieve financially in his life. So it's not like he's looking at this from a business perspective, which is one of the reasons why he's willing to do deals in which he bankrolled the entire building of a new arena for the Clippers to be able to compete and play in. And so when you look at this from that lens, you have to say, well, on the one hand, the hardcore basketball fans like myself will say, well, they need to punish him because he can't cheat and it gives it an unfair competitive advantage. On the other hand, from a business perspective, you have to say, but do you lose somebody like a Steve Ballmer, or do you oust them or force them to, sell the team? What kind of heavy penalties do you put on them? Obviously, they're not going to force him to sell a team or anything like that, again, because he's one of the richest and he's willing to spend and he's not frugal and he's very lucrative and he's willing to throw money around, even though the Clippers has been unsuccessful considering how much money that they spending and Paul George and all of that other stuff. Even though he's been unsuccessful, he is a gold mine when it comes to money, being willing to spend and promote the league, and then being visible and rooting for the team and all of this stuff. And so that is your dilemma. But I personally believe that, and I actually called a couple of friends that I know that played in the league, and I personally believe that this is not anything new, that this happens all day, every day, behind the scenes. We're going to throw you a bag over here. We're going to give you a company over here. We're going to put you in a house over here. We're going to do this. We're going to drop off some money. I believe that this happens at a wide scale. It just isn't promoted. It just isn't caught. He is one of the few people that has gotten caught. And this is one of the first times that I can remember ever that, somebody is getting caught with such a huge, quote unquote, superstar, even though I don't believe that Kawhi Leonard should qualify to be called a superstar. But let's get back to what he's saying.
I guess is, for a CNBC audience, and Mr. Ballmer himself is a guest on this network from time to time. The obvious question is, what did Mr. Ballmer know, and when did he know it? I heard you in a different interview say that you had 3,000 pages of documents and 7 sources. Is there any evidence that you have that suggests that all of this happened specifically at the direction of Mr. Ballmer himself?
Well, I think the question is a bit of an IQ test, right? So the contract that Kawhi Leonard had signed was for a no-show job. He had to do, it turns out, per the terms of the contract, which we acquired, which was signed and executed by Kawhi Leonard, he didn't have to do anything to actually promote the Clippers. There were various contractual outs in the paperwork. Kawhi Leonard himself did, in fact, do nothing to the extent that he publicized an endorsement contract for Aspiration. And so the question then is, what is the linkage between Steve Ballmer and Aspiration? The linkage has to be, I think, fairly considered in the context of Aspiration signing a 23-year, $300 million sponsorship agreement with the Clippers. Furthermore, I think you have to take it in the context of Steve Ballmer putting, per our reporting and our documentation, $50 million of his own money into Aspiration months before a $28 million no-show deal for Kawhi Leonard was signed by Aspiration. I think you also have to look into the emails that we acquired, in which it becomes clear that Steve Ballmer used the Intuit Dome and his connections to the founders of the company for the business development of Aspiration. I think you also have to consider, on top of all of that, the fact that when it comes to how Steve Ballmer runs the LA Clippers, he runs it, again, in his own image. He measured the distance between the toilets in the building. He was somebody who was a micromanager when it came to basketball because he's a true basketball fan, a hardcore basketball fan. And so do we have an email that says from Steve Ballmer, please use this to circumvent the salary cap? No, but we have is 7 sources, including one on tape, who attests that when they inquired as to why a no-show deal, which was, by the way, the largest endorsement deal that Aspiration signed, more than 4 times larger than every celebrity endorsement combined, that's Leonardo DiCaprio, that's Robert Downey Jr., that's Drake. When they asked, why are we doing this for a guy who's doing nothing for us, they were told in no uncertain terms, it's to circumvent the salary cap for Steve Ballmer.
Let me tell you something. Even white people, especially in corporate America, they willing to throw each other under the bus in order to prevent jail time, severe fines, and being held accountable. The biggest snitches are people that are at the top of the corporate ladder in order to prevent themselves from actually falling on their own sword. Again, I think that obviously, if you're asking me my personal opinion, yes, I do believe that Steve Ballmer is playing a different type of game. I don't think that it's right. You got to play by the rules as governed in the NBA and the NBA players. But again, I also think that this happens all the time, and maybe I'll throw this as a conversation on After Hours. But let me know what y'all think inside of the comments. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. Teach Hanley, 40% off your first order, 20% off for life. I love you. I appreciate you. I'll let you guys later. Peace.